you. So hello, everyone. I'm very, very excited to be here. Let me share my screen. So my name is Michal Shomer. I'm speaking from Tel Aviv, Israel. I will be speaking about multi-gender Hebrew today. I am a designer, a graphic designer, a typographer. I have a bachelor's degree in visual communication design from Holon Institute of Technology in Israel. And let's get started. So first of all, I just want us to be aligned on a few basic terms, just quickly going over some basics. So what is an assigned sex or biological sex? An assigned sex or sex is assigned to us at birth, usually by the doctor that treats us. And it's determined by biological or physiological factors, such as our genitals, our chromosomes, or hormones. So for example, if I have a uterus, my sex would be assigned as female, assuming I have other female biological factors in hormones and chromosomes. And same goes for male. So for sex, assigned sex, we have either male or female. However, it's important to note that some people are born with other arrangements of chromosomes, hormones, and body parts. And in that case, their sex might be assigned as intersex, which is a person who has both male and female biological characteristics. So the most important thing to understand is that sex is assigned at birth, and it's based on a physiological and biological standard, male, female, and intersex. Now, moving on to our next topic, quickly, gender. What is gender and how it's different than sex? So gender is the range of characteristics, behavior, social expectations that our society uses to differentiate between men and women. So we have sex, which is assigned at birth, and we have gender, which is a social thing, a cultural thing. And it's pretty much what our society attributes to our biology. And it's important to note that our gender identity doesn't have to align with our assigned sex. So my assigned sex may be female, but my gender identity could be men. So sex, we have female, male, intersex, and gender, we have men and women. And that leads me to the next slide, non-binary. We also have non-binary identities, non-binary gender identities. And these identities refer to, non-binary refers to gender identities that are outside of gender binaries, meaning it's not only men and women, gender is an entire spectrum. And between men and women, there are so many other gender identities, such as gender fluid, agender, genderqueer, and so on. So it's important to note that when we talk about gender, we have not only men and women, but also non-binary people. And non-binary people are considered a part of the LGBTQ+ community, when the T stands for transgender and the Q stands for queer, and these letters may represent non-binary people. So that's some basics about gender and sex. Now, getting closer to language, we have a lot of gendered languages. The higher gender loading a language has, the more gendered the language is. Languages, we have grammatical gender. So, a message right here, sorry. So in many languages, we have a grammatical gender, and you can see that, for example, in Spanish, in French, in Spanish, todos, todas, everyone in the masculine and the feminine forms, French, German, you all know that. And one of the languages that is very gendered is Hebrew. Hebrew is considered to be a very gendered language. It has maximum gender loading. And this is a quote here from a poem by the Israeli poet Yona Volach, which is a really great poet. I really love her. And she has a poem titled Hebrew. And in this poem, she says, one of the things she says is, Hebrew is a sex maniac. And the way that I relate to that quote is Hebrew always forces us to deal with the issue of gender and to take sides and to take a decision when it comes to sex and gender. We always have to address this thing. And not only that, almost all words in Hebrew have a grammatical gender, verbs, adjectives, nouns, pronouns. The generic form in Hebrew, officially, by the official rules of the language, is the masculine form. So wherever we go, when we hear Hebrew or read Hebrew, we usually see this masculine form being used as a generic form to include both women, men, and non-binary people. And this is a challenge for Hebrew speakers and also for other gendered languages. And I want to mention a few interesting studies about how the language impacts our perception, our minds, and why this generic form or masculine form is not so generic, so to speak. So first of all, a general study that was done with students, in high school students, they were given texts and in 3 different languages. One language is English, which is considered pretty gender neutral. It's considered to have minimal gender loading. And the other languages in this study were Spanish and French, which are more gendered, much more gendered than English. And in the study, they found that after the students read text in gendered languages, the students had stronger sexist views. So their sexist views were enhanced. So the language of the text the students read impacted their views, their opinions. Another interesting study that was done in Israel on Hebrew speakers was a study where women and men were given questionnaires, these forms, to fill in about their motivation to succeed in academic tasks. And some of the forms were written in this masculine generic form, and some of them were in a gender neutral way in Hebrew. And they found that women reported lower task value when the questionnaire was written in the masculine generic form in comparison to the gender neutral form. And in addition, women reported lower self-efficacy than men when the questionnaire was written in the masculine generic form. Lastly, another interesting and I think a very important study, because it's very, very useful and practical. A study that was, again, in Israel, in which they found that addressing women examinees in exams in the masculine form had a negative impact on the achievements of women. So if any of you here speak Hebrew, when the exam was written in the masculine form, such as ktov, aneh, namek, it's write, explain, answer. When the test was written this way, the grades that the woman received were lower than when the test was written in the plural imperative form, which is in Hebrew, it's considered pretty gender neutral, such as kitvu, anu, mal'u. So this is very interesting. And after this study was published, Tel Aviv University and Haifa University and other institutions have already instructed their teams to rewrite the entire exams, task materials to be written in the plural imperative form. And also very recently, the Ministry of Education in Israel announced, we'll see if it's going to happen, but they announced that the Bagrut exams, the final exams that high school students take, will also be written in the plural imperative form. Now, these are some of the challenges that we have in the Hebrew language, and there are different solutions to address these challenges, and some of the solutions are common also in other languages, such as using a slash or a dot between the ending of the feminine form and the masculine form, or using both forms together. And right now, I'm very, very excited and happy to introduce to you another solution that I developed, another suggestion to address this challenge, which is called multi-gender Hebrew. In Hebrew, it's Ivrit Rav-Migdarit. So first of all, what are the goals of multi-gender Hebrew? Multi-gender Hebrew has two main goals. One is to acknowledge women's presence and include women in the conversation. You know, as I mentioned, we usually hear the masculine form. So one goal is to include and make women present. And another goal, is to form an all-inclusive linguistic space for non-binary people. So there's no word they in Hebrew, not in the same meaning that it has in English. So another important goal is to form this space for non-binary people to be included in the Hebrew language. So what is multi-gender Hebrew? Multi-gender Hebrew is a new set of Hebrew letters facilitating multi-gender and inclusive reading and writing. So what I did is I designed additional letters to our Hebrew alphabet, which allow the reader to read the text in a multi-gender way, both in the masculine and feminine form together. And of course, it becomes a multi-gender meaning. The text has a multi-gender meaning when you use the new letters. So what you can see here on the screen is the sentence, the bigger sentence here is written with the new multi-gender Hebrew letters, and it says all people are equal. Usually, if you would write this sentence in the traditional Hebrew letters, it would either say all men are equal or all women are equal. But when you use multi-gender Hebrew, the meaning changes to all people are equal. Here's a snapshot of the entire Hebrew alphabet, including the new letters I designed. So you can see on the right side a font called Frankril, and on the left side a typeface called Aleph. So I did not design an entire font. I just designed additional letters that could be designed for any Hebrew font. So you can see here two examples, one on the right of a serif font, on the left of a sans serif font, and they both contain the new letters. Let's dive deep into a few letters and get to know them. So here you can see the sentence, the phrase in Hebrew, it's two words, the phrase welcome in Hebrew. You can see the masculine form and the feminine form. I highlighted in red the differences between the masculine and the feminine. You can see the difference is in two letters. And this is how it looks like with multi-gender Hebrew. So I gave each new letter a name as well. So you can see here the two new letters Yuv and final Tem. As you can see, these two letters are, each of these letters is a combination of the masculine and feminine letters together. So the reader can decipher what the meaning of this, what is the meaning of these letters. Let's take a look at another example right here. We have the sentence, I love him or I love her. In Hebrew, you'd have four different options because the word love is also, it can be either feminine or masculine. And here again, you can see the differences highlighted in red. And this is how it looks like in multi-gender Hebrew. So we have the new letter ta, the new letter va, and you can see on top of the letters, the nikud sign rev. In addition to the letters, I also designed one nikud sign. Nikud in Hebrew, it's sort of like the vowels, more or less. And you don't have to use nikud in Hebrew. It's not mandatory, but you can use it. And same goes for this rev sign. In this case, it's not really used as a vowel, but it's used to tell me as the reader that this text that I'm reading right now has a multi-gender meaning. This sentence has a multi-gender meaning. Let's take a look at another example. The phrase, well done, everyone. The word everyone in Hebrew, kulam, kulan, the masculine and the feminine forms, you can see the difference is in one letter, the final nun or the final mem. And this is how it looks like in multi-gender Hebrew. So I designed this new letter that combines the final nun and final mem together, and the name of the new letter is final nem. And this is one of my personal favorites. So I designed a total of 12 new characters, 11 new letters, and 1 nikud sign. You can see some additional examples here on the screen. This font that you're looking at is Aleph, the typeface that I mentioned a few moments ago. And about 2 years ago or so, this project started as my graduation project for the bachelor's degree. And the work on this project was around 2.5, 3 years ago. And I wanted to show you some examples from the work process, from the typographic work process. I worked in a pretty traditional way. I printed out many letters and words in a few fonts, and I worked with a transparent paper. So on the right here, you can see scans from the original drafts, drawings. And I manually copied the letters that I printed out and drew the new letters slowly, step by step. You can see here some tryouts of the word teachers, the masculine and the feminine forms. And here you can see some tryouts for the word she or he in Hebrew with the letter Yuv that I mentioned earlier. And here you can see some more examples. I have a lot of scans like this. This is a long process of trial and error. So there are a lot of drawings and different attempts. Some are more legible, readable, and some are much less and much more, I don't know, free. And I think that the typographic challenge was as each letter had to be recognized and recognized as an independent learned in
I'm afraid we lost the connection.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, sorry. Where did you stop hearing?
I think this was the slide.
This was the slide. Okay. So I was just saying that the challenge was to create unique letters on the one hand, and on the other hand, each letter had to reflect the multi-gender meaning, the masculine and the feminine combined together, so it couldn't be too unique. And of course, additionally, the new letters had to be part of the Hebrew letters family. They had to belong to the other letters, visually speaking. So about 2 years ago, I published in the Facebook page of Multi-Gender Hebrew free files for download with this phrase "welcome" in Multi-Gender Hebrew, and the files were given for free and without, coordinating or asking me. Just many people and institutions just started to download the files and use them in public spaces. So you can see here some photos on the bottom right side. This is a photo from the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. where they put up this sign, and we had a discussion about gender and language that day. There are some signs in cities, municipalities, Haifa, in the Negev. Here, there's a photo on the center top row. It's a photo from a school in Tel Aviv. So in Tel Aviv, in Ramat Gan, in Givatayim, all schools have been decorated with this sign in the entrance to the school. On the bottom center, it's a photo from my elementary school where they used in the new letters. And after a few months after I published this phrase, I completed a version for download of multigender Hebrew. So I implemented the new letters in a font and in a keyboard, and you can download the letters to your computer and just type them using keyboard shortcuts with Shift and another key from the keyboard. And once I got this published, a lot of people just started to use the new letters, and here are some examples. People are saying that it's cool and that they love the Hebrew language and it's fun that they can use it. And here are some more examples. So on the bottom right side, we have an ad to recruit new employees. On the bottom left side, we have a wedding invitation written in multigender Hebrew, which is really cool. And about a few months ago, we also, maybe it was even a year ago, we had a writing contest in multigender Hebrew. Tali Bleicher, which we didn't know each other, she just found this new typeface and decided to create this contest where people can submit poems or short stories, all of them written in multigender Hebrew. You can see here the winning poem of Tamar Lazar. There were more than 130 works that were submitted for this contest, all written in multigender Hebrew. This is simply amazing. Finally, I wanted to give you an example of a random text. This is a text taken from a newspaper, an article in the newspaper from a few years ago, talking about the teachers' union and how they didn't get paid and so on. And you can see how the letters fit into the text. And I also highlighted again in red the letters that the words that had multigender Hebrew letters. So out of 74 words in this text, there are 10 words that include multigender Hebrew. That is a total of 14%. So some text might be more gender neutral to begin with, so they might not include so many multigender Hebrew letters. Some other text might need to include more multigender letters to make them more inclusive, to include everyone. But you can see it's not every word of the text. And lastly, multigender Hebrew is not alone. So all around the world, people are trying to find ways to make the language more inclusive. You can see on the left side here, the Gender Inclusive Language Project, which is a project led by an Israeli UX writer, Kineret Ifrach. And she initiated this guide for languages all over the world that will help people to write in a more inclusive way. And on the right side, you can see a work of an artist and a typographer which created a letter that combines E, O, and A together for Spanish speakers. So you can see this is happening in various languages, and I think it will be very interesting to see how it develops and what happens in the future. And I just want to say that I think that it's very, very important that we acknowledge the fact that if we want to promote gender equality and give equal opportunity to everyone, we have to realize that the language is a great factor in this process, and we have to work with the language in a way that really includes everyone. Thank you very much. I will be happy to get your questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Yeah, I'll try to be loud. I might have missed it. Well, first of all, I think there must have been some demand for people to adopt, I think, 10 plus letters in a new alphabet. I thought that, I mean, I would never have banked on bet on the fact that people would adopt them. So that is evidence of a strong demand, I guess, and of a pressure that people might feel they're escaping from. So congratulations on that, I'd say. One thing you did not say is how you or I missed it, but I was waiting to hear how you would sound these things. Could you tell us how you say welcome to a identified man, welcome to an identified woman, and welcome the way you spell it, you would advocate you spell it now?
So that's a great question. You're right. I wanted to mention it. So multigender Hebrew is a solution for the written language only. So I did not develop a new way to pronounce these new letters. As I'm coming from the field of visual communication design, I did not go that route to develop a new sound. I hope, or maybe I'll be surprised to see some developments in the future around how to pronounce these new letters. But I can say that when people read texts using multigender Hebrew, when they read it aloud, they often choose a gender based on the content of the text. So, for example, if the text is about teachers, and we know that the majority of teachers are women, most of the people that read, at least what I've seen, they read the text in the feminine form. And for me personally, it reminds me to read the text both in the masculine and the feminine forms together.
Okay, so I don't know if I get to follow up. Is there another question? So then in that case, it is, I thought you'd said that this was kind of had a reading as well, and I was surprised that people would adopt it. So this is pretty much like we've had, I mean, I can testify in France, but you've shown other example, like I thought the very pretty mix of A, E, and O for Spanish. There was some not at all similar, but also interesting example in France with a new character introduced, the midpoint, to separate what is tacked on the words for the feminine form so that it doesn't disappear, but is shown, but not. And then you've got these tedious readings that you need to pronounce if you read the text, because, I mean, this is where the comment is getting perhaps more political than on the topic of this conference. But if you have to always say teacher, woman, or man, I mean, or, you know, then you have to be binary. This is not at all non-binary reading. So I think now we're pushing into basically an overwhelming, overarching cultural problem that people are assigned genders, that grammar somehow is expected to account for that, whereas I would personally, and this is just a personal comment, advocate for use of terms like person instead of woman or man. And then it's actually quite elegant in French because it is a feminine word, but that is not at all a social thing. It's just a grammatical feature. And so we hear feminine agreements in sentences. So the feminine form will not become obliterated. And people will be people before they're anything binarized and separated. And that will include reading.
So in Hebrew, I think it's more of a challenge because I think there are less gender neutral words. So there's no people there's no word like people that is gender neutral, for example. I also forgot to mention in my previous answer that we do have this slang of combining the masculine and feminine forms together. Like if the word teachers, the masculine form is morim, and the feminine form is morot. Together, it would be morimot or morotim. This is one slang that we can sometimes hear. I think that the question is what is going to happen in the future, because this issue of gender in language is very, it is widely discussed, at least in Israel, but I know that in other places as well. So I'm very curious to see what will happen in the spoken language as well, because I'm sure we'll have more development and new initiatives or just spontaneous changes that will happen in the language. Thank you for your questions.
It's very late, but I can't avoid asking you a question. Is it a coincidence, a pun, or is it deliberate that you use the broken vav? Because there is a broken vav in the Bible, in the book of Numbers. It's called vav ktia, and it appears only once in the word shalom. And ever since the 13th century, rabbis considered that it may have some secret meaning. So is it a coincidence, or did you deliberately use the broken vav?
I developed this form based on my typographic research. So I wouldn't call it a coincidence because I did know that this form existed, but I think I developed it before I knew it existed. So you can call it a coincidence or not, but it's just one of the visual forms that was, I think that worked well in my trials to develop the new letters.
So it's a heavenly coincidence. It was pre. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So let us continue with our next speaker, Kamal Mansour